Dr. Reyes.
Yes.
Patient is Mrs. Evans, 51-year-old postmenopausal mother of 3, presented diaphoretic with shortness of breath and crushing chest pain. Chest x-ray shows mild cardiac enlargement with pulmonary infiltrates. EKG shows ST elevation in 2-3 and AVF with reciprocal depressions in ABL, all consistent with diagnosis of inferior STEMI.
Let's get her stabilized and put her on the ACIS.
Cardiac care specialists around the world could soon rely on a breakthrough technology from NTT Research. The Autonomous Closed Loop Intervention System, or ACIS, will help them diagnose and treat patients more effectively.
The Autonomous Closed Loop Intervention System is a groundbreaking technology that we have been working on that is going to allow for better care of patients in the coronary care unit and the intensive care unit. And the idea behind it is if we know enough about a patient, if we have a digital representation of that patient, then we can predict how individual drugs will affect that patient. And so knowing those predictions, we can put together a system that will allow us to very rapidly deliver the appropriate drugs to a patient.
The ACIS contains cardiovascular data from both the individual patient and the general population, as well as a drug library. The system will then automatically dispense the proper medications from the library. It then monitors the patient's response and automatically adjusts dosages as needed. The ACIS then updates the patient's digital twin in real time.
The digital twin aspect of it allows for much more precise delivery of drugs.
The patient's digital representation is known as the cardiovascular biodigital twin.
The cardiovascular biodigital twin is based on a mechanistic model of the cardiovascular system. So it uses electrical circuit analogs to represent the contraction of the heart and the flow of blood throughout the body. It also has other layers to represent other body systems as they interact with the cardiovascular system. It has lungs, it has kidneys, and it can represent neurohormonal controls. What turns the model into a specific patient's digital twin is that we tune the parameters for that patient. These parameters represent underlying system characteristics, things like the contractility of the heart or the resistance of the vasculature.
And there are multiple drugs, though. Some of them affect the heart, some of them affect the vasculature, some of them affect how much fluid is in the patient's body. And all of these right now are adjusted individually. The ACIS system allows all of them to be adjusted at the same time and quite rapidly.
The Autonomous Closed Loop Intervention System will be flexible enough to not only accommodate new drug treatments, but also mechanical support devices.
We can continue to add on new components as new drugs become available or new devices become available. Those can all be modeled, and those can all potentially become a part of the ACIS.
The ACIS system will be able to help the clinician decide on what is the most appropriate path to get to hemodynamic stability for that patient.
I think the great thing about our system is the clinical feasibility. We can smoothly translate our technique into the clinical practice.
We're already working through some of the preclinical studies and have partners to help us with that process.
We can eventually make a more realistic and a feasible ACIS system.
A clinician only has to input the desired result from the drug therapy.
They can essentially set the parameters that they would like the patient to achieve, and once they have that set up, they can let the machine do the work.
The potential long-term benefits of the ACIS for patients and the medical community are clear.
Not only is it going to help the clinician in terms of their decision support, but it's going to directly benefit the patient.
When a patient comes into the clinic with, say, a myocardial infarction, part of the heart tissue is dying, and the longer it takes for you to stabilize her heart, the more tissue could be lost. If you can deliver drugs more rapidly and get to exactly where you need the patient to be, you've saved that heart tissue and given the patient her best chance of recovery.
The people in the remote area who do not have a good access to the advanced treatment or specialized doctor, but still they can have a better treatment.
Once we get the thing designed, we can deploy that almost anywhere.
The hope is to get ACIS machines in clinical situations around the world. In turn, the cardiovascular biodigital twins will continue to refine themselves with data from more and more patients as they receive ongoing care.
The biodigital twin is a dynamic part of the patient's medical record. So it ages and evolves with her, and it learns from each new piece of data that gets collected during a follow-up or a hospital visit.
A non-culprit occlusion was found in your left circumflex artery and currently left untreated, but your wife is currently stable on standard medical therapy and pain-free.
And her biochemical markers of infarction are falling. Basically, she's on the mend.
She's gonna be okay.
By bringing higher quality healthcare everywhere, I think the ACIS can have a truly profound effect on healthcare.
At NTT Research, we're not here to just change the world. We're here to upgrade reality.
How about that? So now, to meet the people and the minds behind that thinking and that new technology, I'd like to welcome to the stage Dr. Joe Alexander, Director of the May Lab, Dr. Kenji Tsunagawa, MD, Director of the Circulatory System Research Foundation, and our moderator, Dr. Junaid Bajwa, Chief Medical Scientist, Microsoft. Gentlemen.
Chris, thank you very much, and sincere welcome to everybody here this morning, and my sincere pleasure to be the moderator for this session. So maybe some additional context, maybe just to set the stage for inventions like this, because inventions need to have a context within which they sit. And maybe for us to all just understand some of the state of health as it exists today. So one thing for us to all to understand is we have aging populations across the world with increasing complex needs. People don't just have a single disease. People are aging with multiple diseases. And the World Health Organization predicted pre-pandemic that the world will have a shortage of 14 million less healthcare professionals on the planet by 2030 than what society will need. So imagine, in less than 6 years from now, we will have 14 million less doctors, nurses, and pharmacists on the planet than what society will actually need. In a post-pandemic world, I would argue that we're actually looking at something like 25 million. So we have potentially 25 million less healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, and pharmacists on the planet than what society will need, with an increasing aging population. So we have a supply and demand mismatch for which innovation will be critical. The other grounding and framework we should think about is every healthcare system in the world is trying to do a few things at the same time. One is improve population health at scale and at pace. Two, improve the experience of care for those on the delivery side of healthcare, these doctors, nurses, and pharmacists, and those on the receiving side of healthcare, patients, public, and society. Three, reduce the per capita cost of healthcare spend. And then finally, improve health equity in everything that we do. And so with that, if we take that context and framing, Joe, where do you see innovation like this, which could be truly transformative to the practice of medicine, fitting in?
Yes, and I should say that it's been said that it's not what we see, but what we can make others see. And I think this video was created for that purpose. 2 years ago, we didn't have a good vision or a very clear vision whether this was realizable. At least I didn't. Kenji Sensei, he did know. But once I saw it, then we wanted to make others see it. So I wrote the script for the actors here and tried to be very realistic in terms of the language that was used. In terms of the quintuple aims that Junaid just referred to, that is improved patient experience, improved healthcare provider satisfaction, improved population health, reduced cost of care, and then the health equity issue as fifth thing. We think that, and we hope we demonstrated in this concept video, that the autonomous closed loop intervention system touches on all of those aspects. It should be, I think Junaid has referred to it as a co-pilot for the healthcare provider. Others of my colleagues have said another member of the healthcare team. But also improved patient experience, reduced cost of care, improved population health. And I think the very last part of the video, Yasu-san made lots of comments about improved health equity for those who can't afford quality care. So I think this concept touches on all of those.
And Kenji-san, how do you take it from the core clinical practice and the research that you do to something like this? What are your thoughts?
So the way you approached, system-level approach, sounds great, and I like that very much. But at the same moment, I came from, in a sense, if I think of like a system, I came from patient interface area.
Yeah.
So I'm watching every day suffering people, and we have to do something. That's the basis of this system. So even now, despite the fact that the medicine is progressing every day, yet even more number of people are dying due to the cardiogenic shock. But if we can combine latest technology, latest medicine, and mechanical circulatory support, patients who are dying can be saved. That is the kind of my first step, why I involved in this kind of project. And now our future is bright. And at the end of the video, Yasan said that, I think it was Yasan, someone need to plug in the number of the level of blood pressure or something, so that system respond to manipulate blood pressure to reach that level. That is only first step. The real step I'm thinking of is, in your terminology, co-pilot system,
yeah.
I want to have autopilot system. So more involved, technology involved system, and hopefully even without involving human resources, machine can perform better than human. That's the goal of this project, but it takes a lot of time. Therefore, we need to move step by step. At this moment, a co-pilot system is a reasonable way of to say that. That's something I comment. Yeah.
Kenji, if I may, in the video we talked about specifying left atrial pressure, cardiac output, systemic arterial pressure, but we're going further than that in terms of metabolic optimization. Could you explain a little bit about what that means?
The heart is a strange system. If you think of other organs, kidney or something else, the heart supports other organs. So if the heart function gets worse, the heart itself gets worse as well, because the heart is supporting the heart by itself. So that is the nature why once the heart function gets worse than a certain level, then there is no returning pathway. So we reach to the bottom. But if we have mechanical system, drug system, and some temperature intervention system, we can let heart survive even without perfusion. It means that metabolic requirement is minimum, yet support is not sufficient, but still good enough to let them survive. So if we can hit that particular portion, even without sufficient flow, we can keep the heart alive. Then later, we can really survive them and let the patient recover. So that is the way how we optimize metabolism of the heart.
And we've referenced this term co-pilot, which I think we were speaking about in the pre-meeting with us. And so one of the reasons for calling things like this co-pilots is I think we will have multiple co-pilots around us in non-healthcare settings very, very soon. So we'll have AI assistants helping us. We already have, in this post-GPT-4 world, ChatGPT or your co-pilots within Microsoft products or otherwise kind of assisting. And people are getting used to now having these assistants with us. I think in healthcare, we still have a little bit of change management to do. We still need nurses and doctors and pharmacists to perhaps trust what comes out of some of these machines. And so as much as what the machine does, there's probably also research to say, what does the human-computer, human-device interface look like so that you establish trust? Joe, how are you thinking about that?
To be honest, we're struggling on the early part of getting this off the ground with the concepts. And we're in the process of building a biodigital twin, starting with cardiovascular biodigital twin, where this ACIS is a kind of use case. But we expect to reach a point where we begin to involve AI. Probably the first interface will be the translation from animal research, which we're using animals to validate the models that we come up with. We need to translate to human data, or human, well, to humans, to patients. And there will be lots of unknowns. So then we begin to interact with AI. And at that point, probably we start to study what role the human plays in that interaction with AI. But definitely the two will be working together. But our models are basically causal. And right now, that's the best approach. We have kind of the greatest insights into cardiovascular dynamics by the person who created the field, who's working with us. So I can't answer your question well, Junaid, but we will begin to engage AI for sure.
And Kenji-san, you created the field, as Joe has said.
That is an overstatement. But I think your point is well taken. We are so much excited about the development. We are engaged, so we focus on particular things. But at the same time, to make this work as a project, we need to include many other things. One of the things you suggested, some things you suggested are really important. And at this moment, we don't have enough time to take care of these, but as Joe said, we are going to move that direction as well so that we can have balanced development in the near future.
And it would seem to me that you would have a number of breakthroughs along the journey, right? So this is, I think, an incredible vision. But you'll have the bio-digital twin breakthrough. You'll have other breakthroughs that come, and you'll need them all to work together, almost in harmony, in order to deliver the end impact. And if we almost imagine what that future world would look like, so imagine we're in that world today, and we think about the equity piece. How do you think that through, Joe, in terms of if we're in this world where ACIS exists, what would be the change created in the universe as a consequence of something like this, to bring it to life, perhaps, for the audience that are not necessarily as much in healthcare as we are?
So for the ACIS in particular, Kenji, I know one of his major drives has been the fact that the current healthcare system is not sustainable. And Junaid made the point that we have very aging populations. The birth rate in South Korea as of 2023 was 0.72. Right now in Japan, it's about 1.4, and the US is about 1.6. So we're aging. Healthcare is getting more and more expensive. And so we need some intervention, almost an emergency intervention. And I think that's the role that a system like ACIS plays. I noticed in Kenji's description about his initial drivers in terms of the quintuple aims, his focus is to help these desperate, dying patients. And so from the quintuple aims, I think, and it's true for me as well, that's, and perhaps for you, Junaid, as a healthcare provider, but that is where my duty is sworn. But when we need to talk to physicians about not being replaced by such a technology, I think strong arguments come from improving population health, reduced cost of care, improving health equity, improving patient experience, and reducing the kind of physician burnout. So I think there are many persuasive arguments to bring people on board, to create a future where we can make use of these technologies to especially address those quintuple aims. So that's the kind of future I see. I don't see it clearly, but then 2 years ago, I didn't see ACIS clearly. And as soon as we can see it, I think Chris and his team will help us visualize it even better for everyone. Michelangelo once said, "I saw the angel in the marble and I set it free." And that's what we want to try to achieve.
That's brilliant. And Kenji-san, I mean, one of the things that we also perhaps know is when we have loved ones or people we care for in such fragile positions, we always want the best for them. We want the best doctor in the best institution in the best part of the world. And we know that actually different doctors and in different hospitals don't always get the same outcomes. And so if you're in the US, if you go to Mass General and Harvard, maybe you get a certain level of outcome. But if you're in the rural areas, you don't always have access to that. Is there a leveling up opportunity with innovations like this where actually, if you have the model working, you almost bring the best healthcare in the world to that person at that moment in time, which can actually then democratize what healthcare could look like?
Well, maybe I could be totally biased, but at least in my mind, we need to have only one established digital twin of cardiovascular system. Every pathophysiology will be reproduced on that model, including every patient. Once we have that, and also we also have the treatment strategy for every patient based on drug library, machine libraries. Then wherever a patient is, when it is, we can provide the best treatment. So equity of the treatment is very guaranteed. And in my mind, future is bright.
Yeah.
The one thing I'd like to emphasize is that in this video, you saw an autonomous closed-loop intervention system that was delivering drugs automatically that was represented. But the fact is that the same algorithms can, for very severe patients, can deliver appropriate device therapies. And certain devices in combination are very complicated to coordinate. And this system, as we conceive of it, will be able to look at every possible combination of drugs and devices and deliver the ones that are best suited for that patient. Wouldn't you say, Kenji? Do you agree, Kenji?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And again, if we put ourselves into the future where this works, I know, having been on the wards and kind of treating patients, that if you have a certain way of working, which is in working hours, you have a different way of working overnight, and you have a very different way of working on the weekends. But you almost need doctors, nurses, and pharmacists and other healthcare professionals to work in tandem together. And I just wondered, what would be your thoughts on what, in a system like this, what would be the impact on a doctor, on a nurse, on a pharmacist? And could it potentially release time for them to care back to patients and not have to have some of the burden necessarily, the cognitive burden of managing some of this? Kenji-san, your thoughts?
Well, that is, again, I often biased, so this could be biased opinion, but if the machine can take care of the most serious patient, that allow many people around patient to have extra time. And they can use those times to further improve a new medicine or new algorithm. So I think maybe enjoy their life, whatever it is. I think our life gets rich, and patient life also gets rich. So I don't see any drawbacks to move toward that directions. So that is what I think at this moment.
So the patient-physician relationship can be more humane or human in the way that medicine should be practiced, rather than to be rushing for a few minutes with patients and so forth. And I think, Junaid, you made the point on a conversation we had that nursing staff could greatly benefit. Maybe they would be the first ones to take advantage of such a system, perhaps. That's just my own view, but that's a very good insight. I appreciate it.
And in a world where we have increasing needs, increasing complexity, I know how challenging it is for nursing colleagues on many hospitals and many wards. Something like this, again, could really unlock their potential to spend more time with patients on the things that matter the most. And again, if we can take some work away and then create time back to care, could be transformational. As you start thinking through the next steps for something like this, what's the immediate things that you need to do in order to make something like this a reality?
Yes, I think most immediately we need to complete validation in animal studies, complete the building of the models, and we're getting close to. We've built a basic model, we've built an enhanced model. Then we have to make a translation, as I mentioned before, to patients, basically. So to that end, we created a biodigital twin center at the National Cardiovascular Center, Kokuritsu Junkankibyo Center in Osaka. And they have access to lots of clinical big data as a referral center from across Japan. So we need to translate to humans, of course. Part of what's embedded in this autonomous closed-loop therapeutic system is an adaptive feedback control algorithm and mechanism to be able to make this work. And that requires considerable development. We have experts on our team who are data scientists who also are control system experts. So that needs to be fully developed, and we're making great progress. As one of the steps that we foresee in the near term is that we can demonstrate the performance of this system in an animal preparation where a heart attack, let's say, has been induced. If this system performs in the animal, then that may be able to help us attract device partners or attract more resources to accelerate the translation to humans. And we need partners who have experience in being able to do clinical trials in hospital settings. So we have a lot of work to do, but we have a pathway to get there.
And the prize is big enough to drive at pace, and people are dying every single day if we don't actually act on it fast enough, right?
So we can think of any complex algorithm to control patients, but at the end, we really have to test whether it's going to work or not in wet laboratory. Pure digital computation application to real patient without testing, that is beyond our hope. It's really, we shouldn't do that. So we have been very careful that whenever we make a small step, we always validate that step by animal experiment. So in that regard, we have a good partner, as Joe said, that National Cardiovascular Center in Osaka. They help us a lot. So because of those combinations, we have now in a good position to accelerate our algorithm development, then accelerate validation of that process. So in the near future, we may try this first in animal and later in human in Japan. That is our near future dream.
Kenji, do you think we'll be ready to demonstrate something at Expo 2025?
Expo 2025, next year. I think this is not something like, in my experience, the animal research, wet research is really difficult to predict. The physical research, like algorithm development, it's more we can predict. But animal researcher, there are many occasions where we couldn't predict anything at all until it really happened. So I wish I could have a good answer and would like to say by 25 we have good experiment, but maybe to commit too much put us in a risky position.
Especially on tape.
So they say sometimes in innovation, nothing happens, and then everything happens at once. And we can see that even in the last 18 months, where people have been thinking about AI in all the things that are around them, and then suddenly you have a chat interface, you have some breakthroughs in large language models, and we now have access to the world's information in the palm of our hands on the phones, and we'll have increasing innovations kind of coming over time. But also there's probably a cautionary tale with some innovations too, that you need almost an innovation to come at the right time so that society can maximize the benefit of it. And so I'm reminded, not too far from here, in 1993, I think it was, there's a company called General Magic, which spun out of Apple, and they were having, in 1993, the best engineers, the best product designers all came together, and at that time, they invented touchscreen, emojis, email, cloud, and they had not considered that the internet would be free for all. They had not considered a range of things, but the people within that ended up building breakthroughs over time. And I wonder if we're in one of those moments, even with something like this device, where you've been planning it for some time, and maybe by 2025 you'll have an amazing set of breakthroughs that you can present, or maybe it will take a little bit longer, but you can't rush these things. Everything has a time and a place. And maybe what we need to do is allow all these innovations to compile so that you can move from simulation to emulation to real-world impact. And I didn't know if you had collectively some thoughts on that.
Yes, to your point, I think Kenji first conceived of autonomous closed-loop therapeutics and started working and demonstrating the concept some 20 years ago. Is that right?
Maybe 30, longer than that.
And over the course of time, certain elements came together, and I think NTT Research created one of those opportunities where we have, in the MALAB, Medical and Health Informatics, we have biomedical engineers, we have data scientists, and we have control systems experts within our team. And at the National Cardiovascular Center, many of the clinical people, cardiologists, anesthesiologists, also are thinking like engineers, trained by Kenji mostly, and also doing programming themselves. But there was some kind of facilitatory interaction that happened when the two groups were able to come together. And this vision, I think even for Kenji, he says, we're close now. And so not so much was happening, and then I think we're accelerating toward delivery of this concept.
And Kenji-san, from your perspective, you've been in this space. You are probably one of the few people on the planet that understands it more than anybody else. Your thoughts on maybe where we've been and where we're going?
Well, in my mind, as you indicated, I have been working in this area for years, but as you said, nothing happened. Now I am witnessing many people are interested in our project. So once we can show that it could work, it is going to work, then maybe it becomes the first year of ACIS development pretty soon. So that is my hope.
So I studied with Kenji when he was a fellow at Johns Hopkins, and I was a graduate student, and he had many inspirational comments. And and he could summarize things very nicely. One summary statement was, if it's working, no one can say anything.
And so I'm conscious that we've only got a few minutes remaining today, and I think we are all excited. So I think we're living in a world in which we have this interaction and intersection of biology, medicine, and technology, and the tools at our disposal are now unlike anything we've had before. But we may have some asks, we may have some needs from the audience or from regulators or from providers or from researchers. If you had a single ask each around what you might want to be true or something that you would need in order to create the reality here by which you would have these co-pilot assistants that are delivering not just precision care, but in my view, moment in time care at the most vulnerable times for some of these patients. What would be your ask of society overall in order to create something like this and adopt it? Or maybe even internally within an NTT, do you have a set of asks, Joe? And maybe Kenji-san could think about what he might need from the wider medical community.
I think it's our responsibility to convince the wider medical community and to convince colleagues that that the technology works. I think that physicians, when they understand that the technology works, they'll take advantage of it. So I need a kind of suspension of disbelief, at least listening and watching what we're presenting and believing the data. And the thing about models is that when you begin to model, especially mathematical modeling, however abstract, then you get people to put their own models on the table because everybody's modeling mentally, if not, mathematically. And mathematical models have a way of making people see that their biases in their mental models don't apply. And so I think a suspension of disbelief, a kind of open mind to kind of dream by day, not only by night, is what I would ask. Yeah.
Brilliant. Kenji-san.
Well, what I'm going to say is very simple. Somehow, engineers have some barrier to join medical training. And I think that barrier is developed not necessarily medical side, but I think engineering side. The reason I'm saying this is that I kind of went through both directions, that the engineer believe that we must have difficult time in medical society, but that is not true. Now, I think medical people are welcoming engineers, so whenever you have opportunity, please join. Assuming that today there are many engineers, please join the medical society and help us to develop ACIS system. Thank you.
Amazing. And maybe just in closing, I think it's been a bit of a whirlwind tour of truly understanding what this technology can do, but the world needs this technology. People and society need this technology. And I'm reminded of Arthur C. Clarke's third law, which is any advanced technology that does what it does is indistinguishable from magic. And so we need to have a bit of magic and a bit of belief to create this and make it real in the world. So my sincere thanks to you both for this session, and thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.